TLC's program has always been called Art and Creativity, but often people have a better understanding of what the art means than the creativity, and it's really important to have some understanding of how we connect with creative process. In some ways, creativity is really extraordinarily simple. It's just finding ways to make things work. And if you put it in a very abstract sense, I like to think of it as the best possible use of energy. So if someone comes up with something which is more creative, it's making better use of the available energy. And you can easily translate that to inventions and gadgets, like, you know, a wheel is an interesting way of using energy compared to walking. And in art, primarily I see it being the energy of communication. So if someone communicates something very strongly and succinctly, I see that as a use of energy also. In the academic world where people are studying creativity, there are broadly two schools of thought. One school says creativity is associated with the area you're working in. So if you're a scientist, that's the creativity you deal with. What we're doing is we're saying creativity is transferable. So although art and science and education, politics, whatever else, they all have their own particular aspects, but we're saying the core creativity elements move quite easily from one to another. So if you learn creativity in art, it's going to have an impact in other areas. So if you run a business or do whatever you're doing that's not art, the creativity from art can go there. One of the big areas of research which we've found really exciting has been a study in America which indicates that scientists who've won the Nobel Prize in chemistry, of all things, actually had a much, much higher engagement with the arts than scientists who hadn't won Nobel Prizes. And that seems to me to be one of the most concrete indicators of just how valuable creativity can be. It's still a matter of speculation why this is the case, but I suspect when people actually get into creative processes, they are literally creating new connections in their brain. And so you could almost say it's the equivalent of bodybuilding, but it's brain building. And so if you're in some area other than art, that brain building still has a high chance of being relevant. So that's the underlying rationale why we see creativity as being important. Now, there are many different elements to that, and some of them don't sound at all what people would think to be creative. From our point of view, for example, values are fundamental, and you think, well, what have values got to do with creativity? And in some respects, it just comes back to some of the almost cliche stuff now about positive thinking. If your values are positive, the chances are you're going to use your energy more effectively. And what we do is everybody who starts on the program goes through an agreement and says yes to it. The agreement's not really set in concrete, although I must say it hasn't changed for quite a while now. But really, the purpose of the agreement is just to identify a set of values which help the creative process. And in a way, you could see the values as a process whereby you can conserve energy. If people get into whinging and grumping, they're wasting energy. I just call it leakage. And so you want to minimize any leakage. Some of it's going to happen. I mean, we have bad hair days, but for the most part, you can conserve your energy and put it into the creative purpose that is your particular goal. I think a lot of what happens creatively is about focus. So if people focus whatever energy they've got, be it great or small, the chances are they'll get a result. But if they've got a huge amount of energy and just spread it everywhere, they might get nowhere. So again, you find the sense of energy is pretty important. The thing that I find really interesting is nature itself is an energy process in action. So you see things in nature which have evolved sometimes over many millions of years, and all of that seems to be a greater and greater refinement of how to use energy. Started off crudely with, for example, single-celled organisms, and has become more and more complicated, and you know, humans are a manifestation of that energy process. I see creativity in art as being parallel to creativity in nature. In terms of organising how we run a program, there have been some challenges, because a big thing is each student is on a separate pathway. The fact that the goal is to be creative means all the outcomes are going to be different, and we've had to think in quite a complex way about how to manage that. From a student point of view, one of the main factors is we have simply eliminated any pre-qualification requirement, and we've said the main ingredient to start with is commitment. We're refining that a little bit, and what we want to see is evidence that people are able to complete. So it's just it's not commitment, yes, I'm committed, so then you're in. It's about being able to show that you have been able to complete projects of some sort. Doesn't matter whether they're academic, can be anything. And I think that ability to complete is crucial to being able to drive through your creativity. Another aspect of this, which is really big, is a very large chunk of creativity comes from your own experience. So your whatever's happened in your life is what feeds your creativity at this time. And so really you're saying yes to yourself rather than yes to a program that someone else is imposing on you. What we're trying to do is go with your experience and add some ingredients which are going to enable you to make more use of what you already have experienced. The core way we're doing this is simply described with what we call the creative spiral. And you can think of it in various ways, but essentially it simply starts with an idea, you do something to the idea, you get feedback, and then you think what your next idea is going to be. So it becomes a kind of cycle or a spiral. And it's not unlike what Jasper John said when he said you take something, you do something to it, and pretty soon you end up with something. And at first that might sound totally trite, but in fact I think it's really profound, because what he's saying is you take action, something happens, and then the next part, which he didn't make clear, is you get feedback and then you do something else. And so the whole process of creativity is built on this kind of evolutionary idea, and you've got to keep going for the feedback, keep the action going, and have periodic breaks where you just think, how is this going? You review, you get feedback, you pay attention to what's going on. Now, when you put this into practice with your own artwork, what's important is to realize, firstly, that you're in charge. So it's a case of doing something initially fully in conjunction with the tutor. In fact, at the very early stages, we actually give people projects to do. So you're doing the project and tutors respond. But further on, we're really keen for people to choose their own projects and discuss with the tutor, figure out, is this relevant, and then push it forward. And downstream from that, we're keen for people to get into big feedback loops, like participating in student exhibitions, perhaps getting into your own shows. As this whole process sort of moves through the stages, I mean, by stage 3, people are putting on little solo shows, and they're getting critics in to critique them, and you know, the feedback starts getting pretty sophisticated. You're getting feedback, you're responding, and you're changing your new actions in terms of whatever feedback you've received. And although that may sound like a very simple recipe, it does some very radical educational things. It throws out curriculum, for example. So we don't strictly operate with a curriculum, we build everything we do around creativity. So you can refer to curriculum ingredients, but what you actually do is driven by your thing. Now, I suppose it's important to mention the misunderstanding that often arises from that is you can do what you like. Well, the fact is, as you receive feedback, you find you have to respond to it, and instead of doing what you like, you get really hooked in to the feedback process. And if you do something and your skills are sloppy, the feedback will tell you that you'll have to sharpen up with the skills. So in the end, I think all the traditional curriculum things that are relevant to you are covered, but the big thing is you're following your own path. So all the time, the curriculum is going to be meaningful to you instead of just being imposed. And I think really that comes down to the core magic of doing art and creativity.